Hello and welcome to the Human Frequency. We talk all the time on this show about how important it is to avoid smartphone use, avoid wireless internet, all kinds of things that people take for granted in their lives that are constantly bombarding us with harmful radiation. So I realize that many people probably don't know exactly how to go about this, and it may sound abstract when I say just use a corded landline or just use hardwired internet. So in order to make it clearer, I wrote an article and published it on our website, thekembo.com. And this article is all about how to hardwire your home and shows our setup with pictures as well as different pictures of devices, the way we do it. And you could copy us now by reading this article and following the instructions. And I'm hoping that this article will demystify it. And we're going to talk about it in a little more depth today and go through the steps so that that will help you when you do read the article to actually hardwire your home the way we do and live an EMF-free life.
Yeah, we felt it was important for a long time to talk about this stuff because there's this existing misperception about people who live the way we do, is that we despise technology. We don't. We just use it differently. We use it in a responsible way, and we're aware of how it works. And again, it's that thing of we are using it, not the other way around. Because if you don't know how something works, and that something is AI, it's going to just get more and more out of control. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the world around us, is this AI, this prevalence of wireless everything to the point of being completely asinine, like hovering your hand over a trash can and then the lid pops open, stuff like that. So it's very important to understand what's going on here and to retake control of our lives, because our lives are being largely run right now by AI, and that's not a good thing.
If you let yourself get controlled by your technology, then you no longer have control of your own mind, and you lose a lot of your cognitive abilities and just basic skills in life. So our way of using technology allows us to be completely connected. I mean, we have a website, we run a store through that, we have our YouTube channel, we are in constant contact with people, but we do it without the type of EMF called RF. And there are many kinds of EMF. We had an episode a while back with Sheila, who is a building biologist, that explained all the types of EMF. The type we're talking about here is what comes out of Wi-Fi and smartphones or cell phones in general. This is the worst kind, and that's what we are combating here, not necessarily what's coming out of the electrical plug behind your refrigerator. This is the kind of EMF that people have lived with since the invention of electricity. We're talking about the insidious type, and we managed to do everything, and we're not cut off. And I'm going to show you exactly how to live a hardwired life and have everything you've ever had. You don't lose anything living hardwired.
Yeah, cell phones are the main offender. I think we've made that pretty clear on the show. And if you think about it, a smartphone is just a small computer that you can take on the go. That's all it is. It serves the same function as a computer, but due to not just the very small size of the object and the energy that it's producing, it is not ideal for us to be doing a lot of the things that we do on the go. A lot of the things, and we're going to list them momentarily, things that can just wait until you get home and have a big computer screen, and you can have the time and the wherewithal to see what you're doing, because it's so easy to make mistakes on a smartphone.
Well, I also acknowledge that smartphones are addictive. It's not just addictive because of the access to content, but also because of the energy itself. DOR, deadly radiation, is addictive. Our bodies conform to it. So we have this analog resonance naturally, and an analog signal cannot be quantified numerically because it's infinite. So every infinite variation, let's say it's a wave, within that wave, there's infinite variations. It's not something that you can quantify digitally. Digital information would take a wave like this and say, well, we're going to approximate the nearest thing to it. So when we, with an analog signal, naturally try to conform, our body will try to conform to that digital signal, it will cause health problems because it will disrupt the communication within our own bodies. So it's a difficult concept, but there's a huge difference between natural living things resonance and the digital resonance. And the smartphones and the computers and Wi-Fi, everything that they do is in digital data. So it's, if you have the signal in the air and you're not doing it through wires where it doesn't affect you, but if it's in the air, your own body's electrical system will try to conform to it. And this is why you'll get headaches and have all these kinds of symptoms, have trouble sleeping. Your body is being disrupted. And we want to help you to be able to continue to live a technologically advanced lifestyle, but without that part of it. That's the part we don't need.
Well, responsible use is all that we're advocating here. And the crux of the problem here is that people have no idea whatsoever how their phones or the computers work, or the internet, or anything.
They don't know.
And when you don't know these things, the natural progression is irresponsible usage. It's part and parcel.
Well, it's been dumbed down. I'm actually going to do a screen share and just show a couple of interesting statistics. Let's go ahead and look at a couple of articles here. So this first one here is from Digital Information World. There was a survey done. Now I have two versions of the survey. I've got the one done 2 years ago and the one done a few months ago. So you can really see what's happened in the last couple of years. This survey was from late 2019, and it was for highspeedinternet.com. They were trying to learn about people's knowledge of the internet. And in this survey, it says that 1 in 3 surveyed Americans could not explain how the internet works. So let me go to the top here. Let's see what I was going to read. Okay, the survey, which polled 1,000 people, had about 86% of respondents claiming they did know how the internet worked. However, only 66% of people that responded to the survey actually knew what the internet is and how it worked. So that's, from 2 years ago. And when we get to today's, it's kind of a little shocking, but let's take a look at this graphic here. And by the way, about 1/3 of the people who responded to the survey thought the internet they had on their phone was 5G, which is obviously not true, since the vast majority of internet users don't even have access to 5G devices, since it has not hit the wider consumer market yet. This is 2 years ago. We did an episode about 5G around that time, maybe even a little longer ago. We were trying to alleviate some concern because people are very hysterical over 5G. And even at that time, it wasn't even available yet, and people were worried that they were using it. Now, granted, the people that put out the survey do not acknowledge the dangers of EMF.
Surprise,
so
surprise.
There's going to be a little bit of a skewed information, but the data is what I'm pointing at here. 1 in 3 Americans surveyed could not explain how the internet works. And that's the part I just read to you. And many people thought 5G was in place before it was, and 77% believe the internet and the World Wide Web are the same thing, which they aren't. Gabe, do you want to explain that briefly?
Well, the World Wide Web is, maybe you should explain.
Well, the World Wide Web is the addresses.
I only say that because you pulled up these articles and you've got a little bit, you're kind of drawing a bead on this a little bit.
I'm a little techie, and so people might think I'm not techie, but I actually am.
And you have also been using computers for longer than I have. So
yes.
there's that.
And then actually, here's another interesting point, is that Gabe and I come from this very, very tiny time window of ages where we grew up with computers, but not with smartphones. It's a very tight little window, maybe mid to late 30s to about 50 would be able to have.
That's it, because younger than that had smartphones their entire lives, basically. And older than that, they were just doing everything the old-fashioned way and never got into computers or any type of technology when it was around, until it got to this point where it's
completely taken over.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do things, to do most things. If you're in the matrix, it's difficult to operate without them.
I find that most older people have no idea how any of this works, and maybe a lot of them avoided it for a long time and then got involved with it after Wi-Fi was already out, which was in the early 2000s. So anybody who got involved with internet technology after the early 2000s probably was using Wi-Fi already. So I come from a little tiny time window where we were using internet connected to the computer and we didn't have smartphones. So I still function in that way, and I still have a traditional approach to computing. 77% believe the internet and World Wide Web are the same thing. The internet is the actual connections between all the computers of the world. A lot of this is fiber optic, like cable. It's all the connections of everything. But the World Wide Web are the unique addresses. That's how you find a website. That's the hypertext that you will input in the URL bar. If I'm sure anybody over 60 is probably annoyed with this right now, but that is what you will type in that bar at the top to get to a specific place. So the World Wide Web is how they designate the different locations.
Yeah, HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol because information is being transferred. And that whole bar that she was talking about is the URL.
This one up here, guys.
Uniform Resource Locator.
And I wasn't even necessarily going to go into this today, but I've noticed that particularly older people don't know the difference between this and a search. So here you will type in the exact address where I am here. All this is highlighted. That's the exact location online of the page you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for, you can open your
search
browser and type in your search here. It'll give you a list of things that will lead you to a URL. Okay, I guess I wasn't planning on sharing all that, but there it is. So back to the graphs. How popular is each type of connection? I think it's very interesting that the largest one is cable. That's very good.
Yeah,
46% is cable. 17% is fiber. That's good too. I mean, it's not as good, but it's good because these are all hardwired. DSL, I'm surprised it's even on the graph anymore, but that is also hardwired. Other, so we don't know what that is. It's probably not hardwired. And then satellite is also, it's hardwired within your home, but it's not hardwired outside of the home. But this is good to know that many people are using technologies that are very easy to hardwire. So if you're already using cable, it's going to be the easiest for you to transfer to this lifestyle of using it completely hardwired. Now, this survey here is the same survey taken 2 years later. This is from September of 2021. So just a few months ago. Now it's gotten worse. 80% of Americans don't know how the internet works. So you went from, we now have 20% that do know. So we went from about 33% that did know to 20% who did know. So it has eroded in 2 years. And that is a little bit frightening, actually.
This article is also going to be full of it because we'll come to the part that I'm actually talking about that came into my mind when I said that. But this is again written from a mainstream scientific point of view that does not acknowledge the dangers of EMF.
So let's just look at the statistics to start with, because this part, whether you understand that EMF is bad for you or not, this part means this is the same for everybody. 80% can't explain how the internet works. 68% thinks the US has the fastest broadband internet. 60% think that more Wi-Fi bars mean faster speeds. That's a very interesting one to me. I will explain that briefly. And if you go to your little Wi-Fi emblem here at the bottom, we don't have one. We have just the hardwired one there. I don't know if that showed up on this video, but down at the bottom corner there, by the time you could see your little connection to the internet. And you can see how many bars you have. That just means how good your service is to your Wi-Fi router. That doesn't mean how fast the internet is. The internet's going, we'll get to this later. I'll explain how the internet works, but the router is sending out the signal, and more bars just means you're getting more signal from the router. It doesn't mean your internet is faster. And 60% think the internet and World Wide Web are the same thing. Oh, that's actually that's down from now. That means more people know that they're not the same thing. That one actually went up.
Well, maybe they saw the other surveys. What, they're not, and then they looked it up.
30% say they use the same password for everything. That's kind of a funny thing to put in there. I think most people do that, or just variations on the same one. But
yeah, because who can
remember all that?
A dozen different passwords.
Right.
That's insane. That's how you forget stuff. That's how you get locked out of certain things.
So this is where they do go into disinfo a little, but there's still some very telling statistics on here. And it's interesting to me what Americans think about 5G. So granted, these people do not think it's bad for you, and they confound people that understand the harmful effects of 5G with people who think that 5G caused COVID, which it did not. 5G is bad for you. 4G is bad for you. all
All
wireless
G.
is bad for you and all weaken your body and your immune system and make it more susceptible to disease. 5G was not specific to COVID. 5G, like all of them, just weakens the body, makes it more susceptible to disease. And so, yes, you would be more susceptible to COVID or the flu or a cold or any illness if you use any DORizing technology. So there was no specific correlation between 5G and COVID. And this article talks about conspiracy theorists. And but I do find it interesting that 30% believe 5G is a conspiracy theory and 22% think 5G may be a health risk. What this is showing me is that a lot of people know it's bad for you. And that's all I need to know.
In some capacity.
In some way. And that makes
They
me
might
feel
not-
better that at least they know it's bad for them.
Yeah, they might not have the full picture here, but at least they're thinking about it.
And I think that's all I wanted to share from this article. Let's stop our share. I just think it's very telling, you know, that people do know. I'm trying to get back to us. Here we are. People do know that it's bad for you. So that's encouraging. But we really do need to understand how this all works. How does the technology work? And I know that they don't. So that's why I want to go over this article piece by piece and demystify.
Yeah. But these articles, the problem I have with it is again just confounding different things, and yet the dumbing down of everything is such a huge problem. It's in the language. It's crept into the language surrounding it. I remember a time when you'd walk into a place and ask, "Do you have internet here?" Now everyone's will just ask, "Do you have Wi-Fi here?" It's like there's a difference between internet and Wi-Fi. It doesn't have to be wireless.
When you're in a public place, of course, you're going to be using Wi-Fi. So I can understand in that case why someone would say, "Do you have Wi-Fi?" But here's an example. We were looking at a house for rent several years ago, and it's in a very remote location. And in remote locations, you don't really necessarily have access to cable internet. And I asked the realtor, "What are the utilities here? And what's the internet provider?" She said, "Wireless internet by Exceed." Now, Exceed is a satellite internet company. We actually did use them for internet because when you can't get cable, you use satellite. We'll talk about that more too when we get to the step-by-steps. But she didn't say internet by Exceed. She said wireless internet by Exceed, as if all internet is wireless. And in actuality, even satellite internet within your own house doesn't have to be wireless. So it's wired into the language now. And people always talk about apps. You hear there's an app for everything. And an app, people don't even know what an app is. An app is an application, it's software. Your internet browser is an app. Photoshop is an app. Your video editor is an app. All of these are apps or applications. But when you're out in the world, you'll be shopping at the store and the manager says, "Did you download the Sprouts app?" Something like that. Like, you don't actually need to download an app in order to get the coupons, for example, that everybody thinks that you need to put something in your phone. These apps, most of them, like the Yelp app, here's another one. It's just a shortcut to Yelp. But if you could just go to your internet browser, you would be able to get it too. So people are just so dumbed down. They don't even know that a lot of things being called apps are really just shortcuts to websites. And you could actually do the same thing without them, when in actuality, an app that I use would be a functioning piece of software to produce a video or to make a graphic for a website or something like that.
So when did you get your first computer?
When I was about maybe 9, I got a hand-me-down computer. So we had Apple IIc computers in our elementary school classes, and we learned how to do basic programming on it. I learned how to make like choose your own adventure kind of games with variables. I learned how to make a graphic on a screen by typing code. And I really liked it. So I did a lot more than what they just taught me in school. I learned a lot on my own at home because my cousins got a Macintosh computer, and I got handed down the old Apple II Plus computer, which was even more primitive than the Apple IIc. It didn't even have the open Apple and closed Apple keys. So it was a very primitive machine.
I know what you mean, actually.
But I used it to play video games primarily. And my parents didn't really know. They thought, I'm using a computer, it's educational. I was playing video games all the time on it. So probably around the age of 9. And then we didn't really have more computers because my parents don't they didn't understand that stuff. So I actually grew up without a modern computer. They got an IBM compatible computer in the early 90s that didn't do much because we were already on Windows by then. And so the computer didn't do much for me. I just used it as a word processor for papers. And we had a dot matrix printer, which wasn't very good. And I think anybody who's older remembers the printers that printed line by line, like,
I
at a
remember
time.
those. Yeah.
And nowadays a printer just prints a whole page. So it works differently now. But then I went a long time without a computer, but in the mid 90s, I took a computer class in college instead of math, because as an art major, I was allowed to take computers for a math credit. So of course I took advantage of that. And then when I started, entered the workforce in the late 90s, I had to learn Windows machines. And so I've been using computers for a very long time. I started doing music recording on a computer. I learned MIDI applications. I have done a lot of music and art on the computer starting around the late 90s to around the year 2000. I've been on the internet since then. I am very technologically aware. So that's a little of my history. How about you, Gabe?
Well, I remember getting our very first computer in, I'm gonna guess 1993, I think it was. And it was not a Windows, it was something else entirely. I remember playing one video game on it. And I don't think it really had much of a capacity for doing anything. I don't even recall using a word processor on it, frankly. We didn't have that for very long. We got our first actual computer, a Windows 95 machine, in 1996, around my 11th birthday. Set that up, and that was kind of my introduction into the whole computer world. And like you, I mostly used it for video games. I was that's the year that Quake came out as a first-person shooter game, and I really just I attached myself to that computer, and I was playing that all the time. I was also using it for as a learning tool, and my parents were a little more aware of that than yours were. I did have kind of a structured computer experience growing up.
I didn't have any structured experiences growing up.
But and I remember eventually starting to use it to print out homework, just assignments I was working on. That was a little later, like maybe 98. That's when that started. But never a phone. I didn't have a phone until I was out of high school. I think we touched on that recently.
So when did you get your first cell phone? What year?
2003.
And my first cell phone was 2007. I was a holdout. I got a flip phone in 2007. And what was your first phone like?
It was a Nokia. It was one of those big blocky gray things that had it looked like it had an antenna, but it didn't pull out. And just a blue screen that lit up. It was kind of a garish looking thing, but yeah. It only did calls. I think it was not until the next phone I got, which was a flip phone, that I one day I just got this message popped up, and what is this?
Yeah, that happened to me.
Eventually,
I was like, why didn't they call me?
Had to learn what a text message was, which I think a friend of mine kind of clued me into that, and I think it was a little embarrassing. But
I was irritated the first time I got one. I was like, what is she doing? Why doesn't she call me? This was from a friend of mine who was about your age.
But I eventually just I kept with, when one would break, I would get another one. But when the smartphone started coming out, I never went down that path. I always thought that they were stupid. And when I saw how people were using them, I got turned off of it even further. So as a result, I never had a smartphone. And by the time I met you in 2011, I still had just like, one of those ones that kind of pulls apart and reveals a texting pad, but it was still a dumb phone. I
had a phone similar to that. Both of our phones, when we met in 2011, could go online, but it was very rudimentary, didn't work very well. These were not smartphones, and we used them just for calling and texting mostly. And the only online feature I ever used was to find out when the bus was coming, because that was important. In LA, you do need to know. I mean, if you're smart, you don't drive, you use the bus, and you do need to know when it's coming because they never match the
Or
schedule.
roughly
So-
when it's coming.
Right. So we didn't use them for very much. And no, I was the same way. I didn't want a smartphone. I thought they were idiotic, and I didn't know anything about EMF back then, but I just thought they were stupid. So before we get into the instructions on how to hardwire your house, let's go over a few irresponsible uses of smartphones, and then a few responsible uses of just cell phones in general, because they aren't useless. They are good to have if you have a problem out in the world. There are no payphones anymore. So it's not like you can easily call when there's an emergency. I mean, there's call boxes on the freeway. You can ask someone to help you with the phone, but it's good to have it in case you get stuck. So let's first talk about the irresponsible uses, which some might surprise you because you probably use it for these things.
Top of the list has got to be watching videos. You just don't do that when you're out and about. I can't even tell you how many times that I would be dining in a restaurant years ago, of course, and someone is playing a video out loud to someone else and disturbing everyone in the restaurant. I think that made it into a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode.
Oh, it made it into the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode of my life when I got into it with one of these people a few years ago. Oh boy, that I'm not even going to get into that right now because I'm just going to start ranting.
The point is, big no.
No, but the thing with that is, and that applies to also giving it to your kids as a babysitter so they can watch videos. You don't know what they're looking at. Okay. There's a lot of predators out there on YouTube that put out really disturbing content, by the way, to get your kids to click on it. And then it has stuff that kids should absolutely not be looking at. But besides, for you looking at videos on that, whether you're out and about or on your couch doing it, there's no reason to bombard yourself with deadly radiation to watch content. You can watch content without doing that. Of course, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to all of this, but let's just go through the list. You never want to do your banking or any business on a smartphone.
Yeah.
I know from some of these articles I've been reading that most people do actually use applications for banking and money transfers. This is too important to do on a smartphone. It's too prone to error. And I don't recommend it. Business is serious. We have to take it seriously.
Tiny screens. What if you hit a 5 instead of a 4? That could just create so many problems down the line.
You should also not use it for social media. I know that's what they're for, but if you use social media and you're doing it through a smartphone, it's so addicting that you're just going to check it constantly. And I know based on some of the statistics I'm reading, people are checking their phones every 15 minutes or more. That's the low end, and then and more. Social media, if you feel compelled that you have to do it, it should be done at home on a computer, and you should have designated times. You need to set limits for yourself on that because it's addictive, it's a time waste, and it actually mostly just makes people upset. Usually people just get angry at something they saw or get in fights. It's really just not worth it. And I know that people use it as a promotional tool and stuff like that. Like I said, if you want to use it, by all means, but set limits for yourself and do it on a computer at home.
Yeah. And maps are another thing that people should not be using smartphones for. You should have paper maps like we do. Now, the one exception to this, I will say, is for emergencies and for SIG alert. If you're living in a remote location like we are, where you're out and about and there's kind of one way in, one way out, it's a good idea to check beforehand to make sure that that road is clear. And if it's not, to know about that ahead of time so that you can make an alternate plan. But
Right.
That's something that you look at for 30 seconds to a minute, and then the phone goes back off again. It's not something you should be lingering on the phone doing and having a computer tell you which way to turn and how far you have to go.
Right. Well, SIG alert isn't even really a map. It's a map of a freeway system. So when we're at our last stop, we go shopping in Bakersfield or LA, there is only one way back home. And if there's a problem on it, there's no way to get off. There's very few exits. We live in a remote mountain location. So what I'll do is in my last stop, and we don't have internet service on the phone. I will turn on the phone. I will log on to the Wi-Fi of the store we're in. I'll look at SIG alert, make sure it's clear to get back in. If it's not, we'll know in advance that we need to go roundabout. And it's happened before where we have to go 2 hours out of our way, but we can get home. So as soon as I see if it's clear or not, turn it off, put it away. That's it. So that is something we do because when we're traveling like this with perishable items, we do need to know that we're not going to get stuck for 24
Mhm.
hours, which can happen where we live.
Certainly.
You can get stuck on that road for 24 hours.
You should also not use a smartphone to communicate with Google Home or Alexa. Why, you ask? Because you shouldn't have those things either.
Absolutely. You should never do shopping on a smartphone. Oh, I know people do it all the time, but you shouldn't do it. Wait till you get home and do it on a nice big computer screen so you don't mess up and I don't have to email you and ask you what the street number of your house is because you forgot to enter it or you left out a digit on your zip code, for example. These are the kind of
Or you
mistakes
entered the wrong zip code.
These are mistakes that happen very easily with smartphone use.
Yeah.
Often when we get something like that in our store, we go to the post office with a package, they'll often be able to tell us there's something wrong with this address. But this happens more often than you would think if you're using a smartphone. I also notice people have trouble checking out sometimes. And this is just on our shop. I'm sure it happens on others as well. And when I say, well, try it on a computer, and they're like, okay, cool, I got it. So that's not a good way to shop. You need to look at a big screen and look at the product you're buying on a big screen. Make sure it's what you want. Look at the specifications. On a smartphone, it's just difficult to do that.
Yeah, you shouldn't be emailing either. That's something you should wait and go to a computer and do. Internet in general, I think, is something that I think you kind of see what the underlying theme here is. It should be an emergency device for calling or texting only, and it should be on very briefly when you absolutely need to do whatever it is you need to do. And as soon as you're done, it needs to be turned off again.
And it's okay if you have a smartphone for those things. Our service is on a smartphone, which is not connected to the internet, and it's on almost never. It costs us $3 a month to give you an idea of how minimal of a plan we have. It's just for talk and text. The reason that we have the modern phone is that, honestly, when people say, well, I'll just use a flip phone instead, that's a huge diversion. You should not be using any cell phone. It doesn't matter, flip phone or smartphone. You shouldn't be using it. You should just have it available in case of emergency. And when you have a modern one, you can be assured that it'll work in those rare instances you need it. And should you have some kind of emergency that requires internet use on the go, you can log on to a Wi-Fi network out there, check it and turn it off again. So we're not saying don't have a smartphone, and we're not saying switch to a flip phone, because people who switch to a flip phone use it for everything all the time. And that's not good either. That's radiation too. So I hope you understand what I'm saying, that there's a responsible way of using it and an irresponsible way. And actually the responsible way is to have a limited plan for talk and text only, for emergencies only, and to use a corded landline at home.
Well, the fact is, once the irresponsible uses are exposed and confronted, dealt with, the responsible ways become self-evident, I think.
So I think I'm ready to share the screen again, because I'd like to go by, I know we went really long on that, but those are some important points. And I want to share my article. So let me share the screen. And I put together not just an article on how to hardwire your home, but a little backstory here on why we do it, and just a little backstory on our technology. So I'm just going to scroll past all that. You can read that later, because I think that it will benefit you to get a little more insight into how this all began for us, as far as understanding that we don't want to be controlled by our technology.
Yeah.
We don't want to get cancer for our technology.
Exactly.
It's important.
But take your time with it. And if there's a word that you don't know what it means, just look it up and do it on a computer.
So I'm going to start with, I'm just going to show you the back of this. So most people do not know how their internet works. In our house, this is how we do everything. We have our internet connection and we have a landline phone. That's it. And where we live, we happen to be just past the boundary of where cable is available. So when you don't have cable, because we are really in a remote area, you will use satellite internet. And the type of internet we use is actually a local company that it's like satellite internet. It's not ideal to be blasting signals all over the mountain, but that's the fact, is that it's happening whether you use it or not. So the stuff that's outside of your house is not the stuff we're telling you to avoid. We're telling you to avoid Wi-Fi in your house. The internet signals of satellite that are being sent over this mountain, they're going through everything regardless of whether you use it or not. And these are negligible because distance is your friend. This is pretty far from us. So there's a little dish that collects it here and sends it in through a coaxial cable, which is like the cable for cable TV or cable internet. Had we been just a few houses over, I think we might have been able to get cable. But when I called them, we are just past the boundary. So we have a different service. It happens to work just like cable internet. And we do not have the EMF problems in our house because, like I said, know the difference between satellite and Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is inside your house. It's very dangerous for you because it's a transmitter in your home. Satellite is just out there. It's out there whether you're using it or not. So if you have a little dish to collect it, it doesn't mean that it's affecting you any differently than if you didn't have the dish. This is the back of a cable modem. You can get these on Amazon. When you have cable internet service, you do not need to use their modem. So you can go on Amazon and you can buy a modem like this. And this little area here is where the coaxial cable will plug in from the wall right into your modem. That's going to bring the signal into your home. This is the power where you plug in your little wall wart. And this is where you plug your computer in. That's it. This one in particular is a Linksys modem. It's non-Wi-Fi. It's just a modem. It's not a router. It doesn't send the signal out. It's just for one machine.
So just to review, AC cable, Ethernet cable, coaxial cable.
So you can use your internet with this and you're set up. You have internet for one computer. You do not need Wi-Fi. This does not transmit anything into the air. So if your cable company provides a modem, it's almost certainly going to be a modem router combination. And we're going to show you a router in a minute. That just means, actually, I'll scroll down. Here's a router. A modem router combination would mean that it brings in the signal and it also has these output ports so you can connect multiple devices. And no doubt, if it's given to you by the cable company, it also is transmitting it into the air through Wi-Fi. So you don't even need these. You can just connect via Wi-Fi. So don't believe the cable company when they say that's the only way, because it's not true. If you go on Amazon and look for one of these types of modems, it literally lists the cable internet services they're compatible with. You can buy your own modem, contact the cable internet company. They will walk you through the setup by phone, and then will give you instructions to return their modem to them, and you will mail that back however they tell you to do it. And then you will also save about $10 a month on modem rental because you'll have your own. So I highly recommend you get your own modem like this, and look how easy it is. You just put the cable in there and connect your computer to that.
The router is basically, it's like a power strip. It's the same principle. It takes one, divides it up into many.
So you can have more machines connected to it. And also in the old days, you used to have a modem like this and connect it to a Wi-Fi router and broadcast the signal out. Nowadays, they're usually combined. That's why I urge you to buy your own. And it only has the one function of acting as the modem, and it's only for one computer. I'm going to show you how we connect. I know it seems basic, but it's good for you to look at this. Here is where the Ethernet cable goes into the computer. So it goes straight from the router, from the modem, sorry. I'll get to the router in a minute, but for just one computer, straight from the modem to the computer. That's it. It's that simple, and you're online. Now, if you don't have an Ethernet connection, many Apple devices do not. They encourage Wi-Fi use, but even an iPad and a small Apple laptop can be converted with one of these. This is a USB to Ethernet adapter. I also got this off of Amazon. You can go there. These are not expensive, and this is how it works. It plugs into a USB port, and it provides an Ethernet connection for your internet. So if your computer does not have an Ethernet port, don't worry, you can do it like this. And always remember to disable the Wi-Fi function on your computer once you've done this, so it's not trying to communicate with things anymore. That will also help your health. When you're out in the world and you need to use it here and there, you can reconnect to Wi-Fi and get on the Starbucks Wi-Fi or whatever you need to do. Now, if you want to connect multiple devices, this is where the router comes in. Now, since I did explain that the cable company will give you a modem router combination, but we're trying to avoid that. So with these instructions, hopefully you've already bought your own modem, then you're going to get a router. This is just a simple example, like the simplest one I could find. And this connects to your cable modem. And this is where it connects. in the wide area network connection. And these are the local area network connections that will go out to your devices. So you can plug in multiple computers, and this is a non-Wi-Fi TP. I think it's a TP link. I'm not sure. We have a TP link router. It works great. At the end, I'll show you our setup. You do not need Wi-Fi. And so this is our living room connection. The modem, I'm pointing with the little finger here. Can you see? The modem and router are behind there, behind the couch. And underneath the couch comes an Ethernet connection to our living room computer. This is our office computer. And all these cables are run around the house. I'm going to show you how we do that next. So instead of blasting the signal out, you're going to want to bring it to your rooms through long Ethernet cables. And these cables can be purchased on Amazon. And you can pin it along floorboards or along moldings, around doorways, through doorways. It's really tidy and neat. If you do it carefully, it's not obtrusive. This happens to be a black one against white, which I prefer white on white, but we already had this, and it's in our house, it barely shows because it's mostly behind things, but you can go white on white. You can use black on dark wood moldings. There's really easy ways to hide these. And these U-nails, this is what they look like. They're insulated. So when you hammer them in, this plastic part protects your cable. So you can run them all over your house. You can get a 100-foot cable, and you get all kinds of Ethernet cables for very low price on Amazon. And I'm saying Amazon because that's the lazy way of shopping. You could probably also get them at stores, maybe Best Buy. But if you want to just shop online, that's the easiest way to get these things. Now, we've already explained how we use cell phones. Very little. Our home phone looks like this. This is a traditional landline phone. It has no Wi-Fi capabilities. It has a cord so that you're not using a cordless phone, which is always communicating with the base. So that's another like EMF signal.
Yes.
We've had this phone for many years, and we do all our calls on it. We used to have a traditional landline service, but it costs about $70 a month, and that's a low end price. Landline service through the copper wiring to the power poles through AT&T is astronomically expensive. So we no longer use it. We now use voice over internet phone. So voice over internet phone is how you can do your home phone landline for very, very cheap. Ours costs between $5 and $6 a month. And that's much, much better than the $70+ we were paying for AT&T. The only thing with this is it won't work in a power outage like a traditional landline will. My article explains a little bit about that. So some older people or people with health issues that want to make sure that 911 calls will get through, or if there's an emergency, they can get through to emergency responders. They might want to opt for the traditional landline, the old style one that requires no electricity to work. But we have a generator, so for us, it's no big deal. We can use these even when the power goes out. This is the most simple one. Voice over internet phone is simply an adapter that connects to your router. This is the connection of Ethernet connection that goes to your router. This is the power connection, and this is where your phone plugs in, just like any phone jack. And you could just use any traditional corded landline. I mean, you could use one from the 50s with this and it would probably work. I haven't tried it, but you don't need an advanced technology phone for this. So that's how we do it. So for television, this is how we do TV. We don't have cable or satellite TV. Again, we are outside of the range of cable anyway, and I don't want to watch junk TV.
Right. We just have a television screen, but it's not hooked up to anything. This is what we use, this HDMI cable, to hook up to our computer so that we can basically pull up something on the computer and close the lid part way and watch it on the big screen.
And it goes into the HDMI port of your computer and connects to the HDMI port of your television. And you can watch Netflix if you want to, if you want to watch the satanic shows they have on there. They also have some good stuff like Star Trek, but you can watch anything you want, Netflix, YouTube, anything online on your TV without EMF. You don't need a smart TV to do this. We don't have a smart TV. So what I'm saying is we have everything everyone else has. We just do it with wires. And many people don't like wires, but there really isn't a problem with it if you can tuck them around walls and you get used to it. It's really not a big deal. We
Yeah.
used to live like this.
Which do you prefer, wires or cancer?
Right. That's the point. That's the point, is you could do it healthy.
You got to pick your priorities in life, I suppose.
I didn't cover this in the article, but I think since we're doing a little more in depth here, I will point out that if you have an old computer that doesn't have HDMI, this port right here with the multiple pins is how you would connect it to your TV. And here's the one on the TV. So there, you could do that too if you have an older computer. This computer, my very, very well-loved 15-year-old computer that still works. It's my office computer.
Pre-smartphone.
Yeah, it does not have an HDMI. If I needed to plug it in to do a video presentation, I have done that, and I've used this port.
Or that other one, the circular one next to it.
Yeah, I don't see that these days anymore either. But yeah, these are the old style.
But there's an adapter out there for pretty much any connection.
Absolutely.
So if you got something that's a little different from what you see here, all you have to do is just find out what it is. Guarantee you there will be an adapter for it somewhere.
And I do encourage you to read over this article and follow the instructions. It's so easy to hardwire your home. These are analog meters. These are the old style electric meters. Smart meters are a very, very handy scapegoat. They are not really as bad as people say. They're not good. Don't get me wrong, but most of the people who are very, very scared of smart meters will not put the smartphone down for anything. And that is really the biggest problem. But
well, it's hypocritical and contradictory. So
ideally, so to deal with your smart meter and have an EMF free home, ideally, you will call your electric company and opt out, and they will reinstall one of these analog types.
If they tell you that they can't, that's not true either. So don't believe them when they say that, because there's always an option.
If for whatever reason you can't and you want to, there's some instances where I can understand if you live in a gated property and you don't want SoCal Edison coming onto your land and it's locked anyway, and you want to still keep the smart meter so that they can read it, you can get a smart meter shield. It's kind of a small picture. I'll show you a close-up of it. This is the shield itself. It goes over the smart meter and it will allow enough signal to get through for them to read it, but will block almost all of it. It's a Faraday cage. However, in a remote area like where we live, this doesn't work. It won't work for everyone. The reason this doesn't work is because we are so far out there, there are not enough receivers of the information to get that tiny bit of signal that comes through.
Right.
Plus we live in the hills and against it, the meter is against a hill. It didn't work. We experimented with this. It didn't work here.
Whereas in an urban area, such as our old place in Hollywood, it absolutely would have worked.
So ideally you will opt out. If you can't opt out, you can get a smart meter cage. You can also get an Acousticom 2 meter, which is a little handheld EMF meter, to see what your smart meter is doing, because these are kind of a scapegoat. They don't do as much as people think. If it's on your bedroom wall, yeah, that's a problem. If it's nowhere near your bedroom, there's a good chance it's not even reaching there. So you can use the meter to look at the pulses every minute or so. You'll see a pulse when it sends the information. See how far away you have to get before you're not getting a pulse. In our house, when I used the meter to check what it was doing, there was a pulse right against the wall in the closet, where it was on the closet. It's on the wall outside the closet. And as you step back, after 4 feet back, it wasn't reading anymore at all. So they're not always as pervasive into your house as you think.
They are a scapegoat. I will say that.
They're not good. We're not saying they're good, but
there are more serious things to deal with. The phone and the Wi-Fi are the two biggest offenders, hands down.
So this is our setup, and I'll show you. This works great for us. I did it as neat as I could because we have a different kind of internet here. There is no cable. It's basically it's a type of satellite internet service that we have. The modem is actually outside. It's very unusual. It's on the capture device for the signal. And by the way, that whether we used it or not, it would be coming through the house, and it hasn't impacted our sleep at all. These transmitters are set up throughout the mountain, and it is for people who don't have access to cable, which is quite a few of us. In remote areas, you will be dealing with more of these type of issues. But he neatly wound it in, and this is the little adapter to the modem that will send it to our router. This is our router. It's an older one. We've had it many years, works fine. It's non-Wi-Fi. It has many outputs at the back. We only use it for 2 computers, but you could connect more than that. And then we also connect the UMA. This is the voice over internet phone service. For UMA, you buy the unit and it costs about $100, although you can get it at Best Buy for about, we got it for about 72 at Best Buy, which is great because that was our whole entire month bill on our old phone service. So
Basically,
this
yeah.
was great to do this because they only bill you for taxes and fees once you buy this. So they make their money selling the units. And our phone bill now is between $5 and $6. It's in the mid fives, like $5.50 something a month right now. And this plugs directly into the router as well. And this white cord here is just the phone cord. It's the phone jack back there, and it goes to our phone. And there's no Wi-Fi in this. I verified that. UMA makes one that is Wi-Fi, and they make one that isn't. And we made sure to buy the right one. Always make sure.
Yeah.
And we have a power strip here to keep everything neat. Everything's plugged in. We kept it as neat and tidy as possible. All right.
There you have it. That is how to hardwire your home. Please check out the article in depth because there's a lot more information there than what we could cover here. But it's important to do this now, and simple is better. Simple is always best. Use your own equipment and you have control over what you're doing in your own home, and it's cheaper too. So it's a win-win situation all around.
Yeah, don't be sucked into all these ads online. I mean, they're trying to sell you so much stuff. It's the simplest thing in the world. I'll just run it by again. Get a modem of your own that's non-Wi-Fi. Get a router of your own that's non-Wi-Fi. Connect the modem to the router. Connect your computers to the router. Turn off the Wi-Fi on the computers. Connect your voice over internet phone to the router. Connect your traditional old-fashioned corded landline to that. That's it, any corded landline. I haven't tried using one of the old type that doesn't plug into the wall. I'm going to try eventually and see if that works. I think it will, but our phone does plug into an outlet and has a digital screen on it that shows what phone number's coming in. So that's the basic setup. It's so easy. Don't get caught up in overcomplicating things. People love complicated gadgets. They want to control everything in their house with a smartphone. They want their security systems and they want their house to basically communicate with them constantly. It just doesn't work that way. And you aren't healthy living that life, and you lose all your own cognitive abilities doing that.
Yeah, so to all the people who say that we hate technology and that we're Luddites, you could not be more wrong. There is a way to use it responsibly. And just as I said at the beginning of this episode, you need to use it, not the other way around. Because when AI is controlling you, go on Netflix and look at the plethora of science fiction films and series that are all based on that premise. AI controlling a race of beings like humans, a humanoid race. And what are we seeing in the human race? A complete loss of all cognitive functions across the board.
I mean, it's interesting in those articles I referenced that in just 2 years, that many more people have no idea how their own technology works. And what do you say to those family and friends that say, oh no, you're going to be unreachable if you don't have a phone, if you don't have a smartphone? That is such a common complaint. I've gotten it myself. I have a friend who said, when I moved up to the mountains here, I gave up the cell phone. And my friend said, I can't reach you anymore. I said, well, I gave you my new number. I work from home. I'm here most of the time. You could just call me on it. I answer the phone all day. And she never called me. She wanted to be able to text me. So this is something that they're going to either have to adapt to, or they're just going to be lost souls. And I hate to say that about our own family and friends, because it's true and it's really a tough reality. But if they can't call you on your landline, if only texting is the only way they can do it, there's something wrong with their communication abilities already. There's already something that major that's been lost there, and it would be beneficial for them to regain it. I'm not trying to be preachy, but I'm just saying that you are not unreachable. You have a home phone. You have a work phone. That's how I was reached when I started turning off my cell phone back when I still lived in LA and worked at my job. Gabe would call me on the work phone to reach me. And if it was something that I wanted to talk about, something personal that I didn't want to talk about in front of my boss, I would say, okay, well, I'll call you back outside. I would turn on the cell phone and give him a call. but only if it was something that couldn't be discussed in the office. You're not unreachable. Email is the same as texting. My friends who text and want to text rather than call, I say, well, just email me. And the ones that want to actually be my friend and stay in touch, they email me. Some of them call emailing texting, which it isn't, but at least they're able to reach me. So email, phone call, that's it. And if the young people can't get with that program, then maybe, maybe mom, you'll get a little break from dealing with your kids all the time. Maybe they'll stop bothering you about everything. I don't know. I'm trying to look at the bright side here, but it's not a problem to get in touch with people who don't have a smartphone.
Well,
And
if someone can't even place a phone call anymore, my God, what is going on here? Do I even need to stand on my soapbox and rant about this? I mean, it's pretty much self-explanatory what the problem is there.
you will just need to be firm with people and say, I am reachable. You can reach me on my home phone, my work phone, or my email. And I respond quickly and I answer most of the time. That's how I deal with it. And if I have an acquaintance that literally can't call me, we no longer communicate, and we don't go to the next level of friendship. That's for sure. And if I have a friend who I was friends with back when I was using a cell phone and texting that can't adapt to me not using it anymore, the friendship does go away. And it's not an easy thing, but we are seeing a divide in the human race here.
Yes.
And we're going to help you get on the good side and stay healthy and safe and stay alive, because this is,
and stay human.
Stay human. Exactly. This is deadly technology. It is deadly, but it doesn't have to be that way. And you don't have to lose yourself over it.
Thank you for listening. Hopefully you were not listening on a smartphone.
But if you are, you know what to do to improve your situation.
Yeah, don't worry. I think that's the underlying message here. Don't worry. There's still time to start living healthy and living right. So thank you for listening to us. Please come to our website, www.thekembo.com. Please read Sharon's articles, especially this one. Now has never been a better time to get healthy and get off of deadly toxic wireless frequencies. And please come to our shop and support our work with a donation or by buying Orgonite from us.
Or my book.
Or your book, because we have a lot more gifting planned for the future. So thank you to all of you who have supported us so far. Thank you for listening. We will see you again next time.